Hi everyone. So today we have spent a bit of time listening to couples sharing a little bit about their experience of conflict in a marriage. Hopefully you had something that was helpful out of that as you reflected on that as a couple. And then we've also done the poll and we've looked at what are the main causes of conflict for those of us who are part of this conference today. Right now, Carlton and I are just going to spend a few minutes talking about some of the underlying causes of conflict and also thinking about some of the practical things that we can do to deal with conflict when we know it's happening in our relationship.
Okay, the first thing I want to say is conflict can start the day you got married. And you're two different people coming together from different backgrounds, different cultures. You've been brought up probably totally different. You're coming together to form a home together. So it's not going to be me, it's going to be we from now on. And we find we bring a lot of self into the relationship. So we're going to talk about selfishness. For example, expectations. In Mavis and I, when within a couple of days of married, I noticed Mavis was not very happy. When we approach and talk about it, I find the problem was who makes the bed up and when to make the bed up. Mavis' expectation was
that whoever's the last person out of bed makes the bed just straight away. You know, you've got a bed, tidy the bed up, it's done, it's a job it's got to do, just do it then.
Oh, my expectation was I don't mind making the bed up. I've always done it before and I got no problem with that. But the problem is when. I thought I had time to go to the bathroom, do what I need to do in the bathroom, go downstairs, have a cup of tea, go back up, get dressed. After I get dressed, then I'll make the bed up before I leave the room to come down for the final time. But that wasn't what Mary's approach.
No, it wasn't what I expected. It's not the way I'd done it. And it seemed to be wasting time, really. But I suppose what was important is I used to kind of say things to, I don't know, get my point over, see if I could change your view. And it was something that we needed to sort out.
To talk about it.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think apart from selfishness, I think another thing that can be a cause for conflict or an underlying cause for conflict is about pride. So that's kind of the time where maybe as an individual, you want your position to be taken. Maybe you don't want to lose face, you made a mistake. Maybe there's something that's been hurtful that's been said and you're trying to protect yourself. Or you just want to, maybe kind of feel it's important to dig your heels in really about a particular issue or particular matter. And that, I think that can be problematic in terms of causing conflict.
In other words, you normally you don't want to be the first one to say you're sorry. But I saw that, and so I normally was the one to say sorry, break the ice, and then we talk about whatever situation it is. You know.
Yeah, I think that's right. It was that I was least likely to admit regret or sorry about something. Yeah, you were always the one who would do that first. Yeah, that's true.
And that can, if you've got unresolved issues or you're still not happy, what you probably start doing, you start being very picky. So about other things that your spouse is doing, and become very critical. And every little point you want to pick up to score points. That's pettiness, and you really don't want pettiness in your relationship. Through pettiness, that can lead to bigger problems. Picking on minor issues as a way of undermining your spouse. What we need to do is point out matters that are small, minor matters, rather than dealing with the real issues. Example, one of my things that I realized I was being petty about, maybe because of the bed situation, is the way Mavis went to drink her tea. She never drink all the cup of tea, but then she poured the rest of the tea with the tea bag in the sink and leave it there. And I watched it for a while, then I thought, well, she's going to pick it up. No, she's not going to pick it up. It's there. And an hour, 2 hours later, I normally pick it up, put it in the sink until it comes to me that I have to say something about it. That is being petty, and I realize that. And then I have to say, again, I have to apologize.
I think another area probably that we can think about is maybe where instead of somebody raising a matter and speaking about it, they don't. So something that they have a concern about, for example, and the reason they don't raise that issue is maybe because they're fearful about the impact on the relationship, or they're insecure in that relationship. And the reasons for that can be, a number that certainly was said in the conversation that we had earlier. It might be that people come from homes where conflict was not dealt with at all. They don't see how you deal with it, or they've seen quite negative consequences when somebody raises a particular issue of concern. Maybe something that's been quite extreme in terms of its outcome, maybe violence or slamming doors or verbal abuse, those kinds of things. I think what's important in that kind of situation, yes, that there is conflict there, but it's not healthy to not be able to raise it. If you're in a situation where you're fearful about the relationship, if you're insecure, you're frightened that that person is going to stay in the relationship, then actually there's some fundamentals that really need to be looked at. There should be no fear. There should only be safety in your marriage relationship.
A point to always remember is who the real enemy is. The enemy is not your spouse. The real enemy is the devil, and his job is to divide husband and wife. He's the real enemy. Remember, his job is to break up marriages. Remember in the Garden of Eden, where he approached Eve first, and Eve, Adam, and then what happened? They're separated from God. You don't want the enemy to come in and separate each other. So in conflict is one of the things that can help the enemy break up any marriage. So
those are the kind of things, aren't they, that we've said that are kind of underlying things like selfishness, pride, pettiness, fear and insecurity, or just the reality that we have a real enemy. So what we want to do is maybe think about some of the things that we can do that help to deal with conflict practically. I think one of the things that we need to recognise is that when two people come together, they are different, and therefore there are going to be differences that happen. And those things, though, don't have to be negative. Sometimes it's the very differences that have attracted us to that individual. So we don't want to lose those. We actually want to see them as a positive and work on them in that kind of way. I mean, just how boring it would be if I was married to myself. That's not at all.
That's true.
So we need to see our differences as a positive thing.
First thing we got to do, act in respect the person. This is about how you treat your spouse. You need to communicate without taking bites out of each other. Be considerate in your language. Don't say things that you know is going to be harmful. And it's going to be personal, like you always do this, you never do this, you're selfish when you do this. And then you start in their family, you're just like your mom and dad, when, and really I'm thinking about doing this and doing that. But in that situation, when your fire is getting heated, what the best thing to do is take a step back and rethink about the situation. Ask the Lord to show you your spouse perspective. That's what I had to do at times. Just for myself, praying, ask the Lord, show me what I'm not seeing, and show me what Mavis seen, so Mavis is seeing, so we can take together. And so what I'm saying is to take control of your tongue.
I think also in respecting the person, you can also show that you're listening to them. So in the kind of words that you use, you are reflecting what they've said and showing how you're going to deal with that issue that they've raised with you. So not just saying sorry, but also saying, I won't do that again, or next time if I'm in a situation, I will say it in this kind of way. I think that's also important in terms of how we show respect for our spouse in those situations. Really what we want to do is try and resolve the issue. And sometimes we can respond based on our personality. So it might be that you're a person who withdraws, like we talked about a bit earlier, and doesn't want to deal with something, or you're the opposite. You're a person who's, you know, really confident, perhaps going at an issue in an aggressive, positive way. And the reality is neither of those are going to be the best way to go about that kind of situation.
I have a personal experience of this with my mum and dad. My mum was very placid. I don't think I've ever seen her raise her voice in anger. And she was never ever abusive to her children. But my dad was completely the opposite. He was abusive, actually he was an alcoholic, and also a gambler. So, but my mum always never answered back, always fearful, and then they'll go to bed and not deal with the situation. But what my mum did was, when my younger sister becomes 16, my mum just divorced my dad and never seen him again. She never wanted to talk to him again. And even to the point of when my dad died, she never came to the funeral.
So, you know, we can see that actually trying to resolve something is much better than just
doing that.
Keeping it under the carpet and leaving it to fester. So if we're recognising that we're both on the same side, that actually that we want our marriage to be good and to be resolved, then seeking to come alongside each other is the way that we would want to take things forward, and doing that in a healthy way.
Okay. Now, in coming alongside each other, we're going to give you, these are the sort of things that will help you. First, be the first person to say sorry. This helped to break down selfishness or pride. No harm in saying I'm sorry. Don't assume your spouse knows how you feel. We may think we know how they feel, how upsetting they are, but unless you talk about it, you will not know. So talk about it. Find ways to show you how you feel. Take time to say, when things happen, this is how I feel. This is a key. Take time to listen to your spouse. And we find when you take time to listen to your spouse, always say, okay, play it back, say it back to your spouse to make sure you understand how they feel, and then you can move on. Because sometimes listening is a skill that you need to develop, that can be developed. You can learn that skill. Recognize that winning isn't everything. Pride means you want to be the person who is right. Now, if you're a talker and your spouse isn't, is the quiet one, then you can bombard your spouse with so much words that they will just withdraw into their shell. And remember, you don't want to do that. You could end up winning the battle, but losing the war, and that is not the aim of things.
And I think also there's a piece of advice that comes straight from the Bible where it says, don't let the sun go down on your anger. And that's really about giving advice about trying to resolve an issue quickly, dealing with it quickly, or giving it enough time so that it can be resolved. The earlier you deal with a matter, the better it is for your relationship, and the more quickly it is forgotten. Whereas if you leave it to fester and take time, it takes longer and it can be more damaging.
Okay. Now, we're not talking about abusive relationship here. We're not talking about relationship where couples shout at one another, bang doors, slam doors and stuff, and this is a constant repetition in marriage where you end up with physical abuse, verbal abuse, or emotional abuse. That's not what we're saying here. Where this is a continual battle in your relationship, and this situation persists in a relationship, what we ask you to do actually is to both of you get help, get counseling from a trained person.
But I think the thing that we would want to say is that if you use some of these tools that we've already talked about, some of these practically, and apply them to your marriage and apply them to some of maybe the small issues that come up in marriages, you will be used to having a positive way of dealing with conflict. And therefore, no matter what the issue might be, whether it's a little trivial one or a big serious matter, what you've got is the tools that will enable you to deal with that in a healthy and constructive way for your marriage.